Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Tainted Warriors. I'm Mikey.
I'm Nicole. That moves us right on to our question of the week.
Alright.
This week it is, if you were a superhero, what superpower would you want? I always thought I would want the ability to read minds, but I rethought that. I decided that I would want to go with the ability to basically tell the future because I want to be able to see if something catastrophic is going to happen so that hopefully I can do something to try to prevent it or at least minimize the outcome.
Well, I like that. For myself, I said either levitation or to fly, very convenient for me who doesn't drive. It'd be very nice. But my answer was boring. I asked this question to a fan. And when I said, if you could be a superhero, what power would you want? They said, I want teleportation. I said, oh my God, that's a really good one. Till they continue on and say, because then I teleport myself into a bank vault. And I said, wicked good answer, but doesn't that now make you a super villain? Because, you didn't think I'm going to teleport to try to stop this like Nicole was going with seeing the future. You're trying to put yourself in a bank vault to steal them bags.
I don't want to have to stop our fans.
Can't blame them. Hey, like I said though,
that was good.
It was good. I was like, oh, you just threw a whole spin on that. Because I was like, I don't know whether to call you a superhero or a supervillain now.
I think that would become a supervillain.
Yes, and they were fine when I said that. They were perfectly okay with it. They said, all right, then I'll be a villain if I have to. So, with that all being said, we are going to go into this week's topic of Miss Princess Diana. Diana, sorry. I'm going to be covering her life. She did do a lot. There was a lot that this woman has gone through, a lot that she stood for.
She's a truly good person.
Yes, I do believe from the bottom of her heart. You could literally just see it. And I do believe that the marriage that she went through played some tolls, and she went through a really hard time with that. But let's kick it back to born on July 1st, 1961 as Diana Frances Spencer. She was one of 3 girls. Sisters' names are Sarah and Jane. She had technically she did have 2 brothers. One of them is Charles, who was living. There was John, who I did hear passed away, and I didn't find too much about him and what really happened.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
She was a Cancer. That was her zodiac sign. When you said July 1st, I was like, wait.
I was wondering what you were doing.
I'm pretty sure Cancer, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure Cancers are, very good-hearted people. My little brother's a Cancer.
Oh,
so,
definitely. She said growing up, childhood was not really the best ideal life, I guess. I could have been taking it wrong, but I was under the impression that her mother wasn't really the best mother, didn't really want to be a mom, and that she ended up actually going and living with her father, and then that's where she does say that, it still wasn't the best life growing up.
They were divorced, right?
Yes, they were. Also, growing up, she was born into British nobility and grew up close to the royal family. So, it's not like it was, I guess it was very uncommon, or not uncommon, it was said that she was almost like a nobody and then kind of swept up by this prince and, wafted away. But no, it wasn't like that. She was known around. And I will say, it was stated that at 16 years old, she did. Before 16, she would always say that, I'm going to be in the royal family. I am going to marry Prince Charles. Very funny that she would say that, almost as if she said it enough to almost like it was like a premonition?
Or an arranged marriage?
Yeah, almost, but the family wasn't getting anything out of it.
Right.
But at 16, she actually grew closer to Prince Charles while he was dating her older sister, Sarah. And I didn't say, it's not like she kind of, ruined their relationship, I feel. I don't believe that was Like, you know, that's just how she, like, kind of got closer to him or got to know him. So she does decide to move on out with 7 of her friends. They share a loft. She does pick up odd and end jobs here and there. She was, I heard, a nanny. Something else. I can't remember what else. You know, she did do a couple, like I said, odd and end jobs. Not until, but even up till when she was engaged with Prince Charles, she was still a nursery school's assistant. And I do believe that she had every intention of carrying on working or doing whatever she could. She liked that. That was what she
was so good with kids.
So good. We're gonna go. So she did a lot of charity work, but we're gonna go a little bit. Like I said, their wedding was July 1981. I know
July
that.
29th.
July 29th, 1981. She actually gets engaged or married to the prince. I think I could be messing the number up, but it was seen over by like 700 million people, 7 million people.
750 million viewers. And I just want to make a point on that they didn't have streaming services back then. So
right.
This was all people sitting down in front of a TV, different TVs, like watching.
The last biggest thing that happened that had this like a big amount of viewers was the moon landing.
Wow. And
this blew that out of the water with how many people actually... They said even in America, people were setting their alarms to wake up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. It was very...
thought about it.
True, huge
I guess I
event.
didn't think about it. I'm thinking about her kid. Never mind.
I was like, I was very young, so I don't...
We weren't alive when they got married. It was 1981.
Oh yeah, 81. So I was thinking of her death, though. Like, you know, because once again, during her death, yes, that was another really huge... thing. But, and I did jump ahead a little bit, I do want to say I don't have much about her, but I do know that Prince Charles was not very wanting to get married, wasn't really like in a rush, and he actually had I call side piece, I think we'd all consider a side piece, Camilla, who actually he was like going to marry, like it was, you know, he had to choose between Diana and Camilla. And he chose Diana due to family pressure. I don't know if that was like them liking her more or, you know, or if they just didn't care who. And, you know, that he just got married to said person because of family pressure. But even during interviews, there was a lot of interviews that I came across where I was watching where he doesn't seem affectionate. He was asked flat out, "Are you in love?" And he says, "I guess in love, whatever love is." And I guess that was actually stated. It was pretty smart if you think about it, though. He said that because he didn't want his side piece, like I just stated, Camilla, to actually think that he was this invested and involved with the princess, now the Princess of Wales.
Formerly Lady Diana.
Yes. And as Princess of Wales, you know, we do know that took on a very big role. She knew of her roles that she had to do, but she didn't want to lose herself. So, she was like I said, the first royal person to have a job before becoming royalty. Because usually you're born into it, or you know, you're usually very wealthy, and you know, it's just very not heard of. And like I said, with that, she still wanted to continue, so she started doing charity work. She is actually one of the very first people that has it documented. During the AIDS epidemic, shaking hands with somebody that had AIDS to prove that is not how it spread, which I find very,
admirable.
So admirable.
Like you had the courage to do what so many other people wouldn't.
And she believed in the gay community and in that, and knowing that, like, don't treat these human beings as if they're nothing. Just because of what you don't know, you're afraid of what you don't know. Look, as long as you are willing, and you know, look, she shook her hand, and it showed the world that that's not how it transferred.
And so many groups.
Yeah, I can only imagine what else she could have done if such a tragedy didn't happen. The craziest thing with her death, and I won't get into too much about it, and I'm gonna let Nicole's about to take it over because, I think I made. There's so much that she did do before. Like I said, I just had a little bit. I kind of wrapped it up a little short and sweet because her death is very mysterious. And it is very, like...
I feel like we want to do a podcast on her legacy later on.
Yes. Totally. I want to, yes. And then, like, I also want to look more into Harry. Because Nicole was telling me he does seem like
Diana episode.
We could
connect into how, like, Harry is kind of, I feel, trying to continue on. And
with her, you know, just her caring, like I said. But with her death actually only happened 1 year after the official separation of her and Prince Charles. So it almost leaves you wondering, was there something more to
the
this?
Divorce?
Yeah. 1 year.
That's crazy, because I actually, like, I didn't write down the date for the divorce, but I wrote, like, they separated in, like, December 9th, 1992, and divorced 3 years and 8 months later, but I didn't do that math.
From the divorce.
That's crazy.
Oh, it stated it right here. That's what
That's insane.
That's what I was looking.
I didn't even do that math. So basically, he got divorced and then took a year to plan this.
Him and his they do.
Like, I know he married. I don't know if you guys know this, but he did marry Camilla on April 9th of 2005. So like, it's a little like, okay, he waited 8 years to marry her, but it's like, okay, but she was around
the whole time,
the entire time before he even like was engaged. So you're really gonna tell me that nothing was happening and that this, like, Diana knew something was happening? She walked into his secretary's office one time and found a gold bracelet for Camilla from Charles. Like, she had seen flowers for Camilla from Charles, but he always was like, oh, she's a friend. So that's crazy. I didn't do the math on that when I wrote it down.
Right.
It's like late at night. I didn't want to.
Like I said, I like your idea of going back and doing a Diana legacy. Because like I said, what I did was a very quick overview. She has done so much and stood for so much. And it led into... Oh, I do want to say, while she was alive, she was told by not only just people in the palace or whatever where she was living, but by the queen herself to draw it back a little bit. They didn't want her out in the spotlight and being so charitable, because it was actually making the royals look bad. Because they weren't really like... I mean, they did help, yes. But they weren't as...
They're very interested family.
Yes, if it was almost like if there wasn't something in it for them, there was no reason. Where Diana wasn't like that. Diana wasn't like that.
They'll keep their image perfect, whereas Princess Diana was willing to talk about the demons that she was facing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she would talk about bulimia.
She did a whole interview with the mental health. I know that she talked after their divorce. She actually ended up doing a whole interview about her marriage and talks a couple times about abuse and self-harm. And it was actually really hard to hear a lot of these things. Like I said, I didn't want to write a lot of it down, but I do want to go back through and and then I want to also like I said, think about what she could have done if what happened.
I like to think Harry is what she would have done.
I'm
doing now is I feel like what he's doing now is the same thing that she would be doing if she were here. They would be doing it side by side, I think.
And
which sucks,
like
because
I said, I want to look more.
He doesn't have that chance, so it really sucks.
It does.
Like, no matter who was to blame, it really sucks that those kids had to grow up without her. Like, obviously, William, I feel, took more after Charles anyway, but Harry obviously has a lot of compassion like Diana. So, it was 12:20 a.m. on August 31st of 1997 when this took place. There were 4 people in the Mercedes: Princess Diana, Dodi Al-Fayed, Henri Paul, and Trevor Rees-Jones. They were supposed to be going from the Ritz Hotel that Dodi's dad owned. Him and Diana I think they were supposed to go to dinner, but there was too much paparazzi, so they ended up going to the hotel because they didn't want to deal with paparazzi. And they were originally going to stay there, but something happened. I think that Henri Paul convinced them that they'd be okay, they'll work out security, and they decided that they were going to go to Dodi's apartment, which was a little bit across town. I don't think it was that far based off the map they were showing. I mean, obviously you're talking like it's in Paris, so it's a city, so it's going to take a couple minutes to drive there, but it's not really that far. You know what I mean?
It's not like a country. We all know country miles and city miles are
way different.
Right, so you got to take those into consideration.
Right. So the Mercedes that Henri Paul was driving. So it was Henri Paul driving, and then in the front passenger seat was Trevor Reese-Jones, and in the back was Princess Diana and Dodi Al-Fayed. Dodi Al-Fayed was behind the driver, and Princess Diana was on the passenger side. It crashes into a pillar inside the Pont de la Alma tunnel in Paris. And I'm sorry, I'm not French.
So that's a really hard. I think you did a really good job announcing it, like saying it, because
I'm also like trying real hard with these names because like Henri is spelled.
Oh, you're doing
like
them
Henry.
all. They're all right though. Like because I've watched so much about him that it's
Right.
Henri Paul.
I think that's the reason I'm doing okay with these.
You are doing awesome with your names.
So Trevor Reese-Jones was a bodyguard. He was the only one to survive. Supposedly, he was the only one wearing a seatbelt. But
And now, I'm sorry. Did you say he was he in the front or was he next to her?
he was in the front passenger seat.
Okay.
He was her bodyguard, so that makes sense. He was sitting in front of her.
Right.
I feel like that's okay. So upon impact, Henri Paul, the driver, and Dodi Al-Fayed, they died instantly. I saw that Princess Diana wasn't trapped in the car, but she had hit the seat in front of her, which ended up, the accident gave her internal bleeding, trouble breathing, and low blood pressure, and she was semi-conscious, but obviously, like, if you got all that going on, you're not going to necessarily be 100% lucid anyway. They end up having 3 ambulances come to the scene, and by 12:40 a.m., so about 20 minutes later, she was put into one of those 3 ambulances to go the 3 miles to the hospital. I did see it might have been 4 miles, but so we'll say 3 to 4 miles to the hospital from the tunnel. The ambulance stopped twice. Once it stopped 1 kilometer from the tunnel, and then again 300 yards on the bridge near the hospital. So it was 300 yards from the hospital.
Yep.
They said it was because she had low blood pressure, so basically they were trying to stabilize it, but I mean...
No, I mean, I've heard this. I'm pretty sure that EMT workers that are on the ambulance are supposed to be trained to be able to do some things while driving,
Right.
and that is something that you are trained to be doing while you can still drive. So the fact that they stopped twice was already suspicious enough.
Do you know if that's in France, too?
Oh, that I'm not too sure. You're right.
The only thing I saw is that in France, they tried to stabilize them on the scene before taking them to the hospital.
Right, which is why
in the U.S. we kind of
try to get them right there. But that's why the ambulance took a minute to get or leave.
Right.
The
They didn't say anything at all about like the actual ambulance ride though, so that's why it was a little like, okay, but
I can't remember.
Because to me, it doesn't make sense. Like I don't see them only having. I don't know France, so guys, if you do, please let us know how it works because. In my mind, there's going to be at least 2 people in the ambulance. There's going to be 1 driving, 1 in the back with the victim or like the injured party.
And that's just standard thinking. I mean,
right? Why would you leave them alone?
Like, well, I mean, in America, we sometimes you can get up to. There are more sometimes like more than just 2 people. Be more. But I'm just you're right thinking about that way where it's just basic.
2 people.
It's got to be at least 2 people. 1 person driving and 1 person in the back.
And you had 3 ambulances on the scene. Like, what's going to be more important than Princess Diana that you can't have those EMTs all jump in and help if need be? You wouldn't necessarily leave them short. So I don't understand like.
And if it's 1 person doesn't know, there's still at least another person that could have helped or should have jumped in. I
don't get that part. But
it already seems sketchy.
That's part of the conspiracy of
right.
It. But anyway, back to just.
Sorry.
No, you're good. I'm just trying to run down the details of like the death, like the night. So the ambulance does finally get her to the hospital, and I saw a statement from a Dr. Bruce. I just put R because it was just a bunch of vowels afterwards. It was like RIOU, so like Rue. I don't know.
Well, I like how you're still spelling it though. That way, you know.
Hopefully you can look it up. I mean, I'm going to put a caption anyway, so I don't know why I'm spelling it, but he did say that, you know, the ambulance service took charge. They tried to resuscitate her, but she was badly hemorrhaging. Again, talking about Diana. We're back on her. When she got to the hospital, they did perform a thoracotomy, which revealed a badly torn left pulmonary vein. Though her heart was already badly damaged, it was starved of oxygen, and the pumping action was cut short because of the lack of blood. And they tried for 2 hours to do internal and external heart massages, but they couldn't get the circulatory activity back and ended up pronouncing her dead at 4 a.m. So officially, the police initially arrested the paparazzi. I believe it was just a few hours after the accident. They arrested the paparazzi, including one of them that was a witness that supposedly called 911 and literally ran to the police station because he didn't think they were believing him on the phone. Like, he ended up getting arrested also. They tried to say he was lying or wasn't speaking clearly enough that they could understand him, but whatever. So
and these Americans sitting at the France fucking ambulance.
His name was Eric Patel. I think I have something on him later. I'm not sure. But 2 days later, they released the paparazzi and only charged them for not helping because apparently they have a good Samaritan law over there where basically you see someone in trouble, help.
Right.
It's the law. It shouldn't have to be a law.
Right. It's like,
the law.
It's common sense kind of, but I mean the fact that it is a law is pretty smart. I do like that. Like,
I think going back to our one question of the week, like if you could rule, what would your first law be? I would think I'd start with that, honestly. Right? Like, just be a good Samaritan, please. But yeah, so the police changed the story, let the paparazzi go, and then they say that it wasn't the paparazzi that caused the accident. It was the driver, Henri Paul. He was drunk and had medications in his system. And I believe to this day that's still the official story.
Yes, I'm pretty sure too.
So now I'm going to get into the conspiracy of it. First, I'm going to start with the scene of the crime. The police stated that the speedometer from the Mercedes was frozen at 120 miles per hour. But when asked, Mercedes said that the speedometer automatically reverts back to 0 on impact. So according to the car's maker, that shouldn't be possible. They also state that the camera at the beginning of the tunnel, because it was a camera to catch speeders. You know, I think if you went over 60 miles an hour, it took a picture of you, and then you got a ticket in the mail a couple weeks later. Police said that wasn't actually working. However, there was a man that went through a few minutes before the Princess Diana's accident, and he did get a ticket in the mail from that camera catching him speeding a couple weeks later. Which, thought it was broken.
Pretty fishy, right?
It broke between them
literally
and Diana.
within a couple minutes. Sorry, guys. He's the reason why it broke, because, I mean, it was taking the last picture of him.
If that were true, that would just add to, like, my conspiracy suspicion.
Right? They might as well just keep their mouth shut about it. Right. Because that is going to make it just look 10 times more fishier.
You just pretend it was broken. It's better for your image. I think I already said this, but supposedly no one but Trevor Reese-Jones, the bodyguard in the front, was wearing a seatbelt. But people say that Princess Diana was very religious about seatbelts. Like, she always had to wear hers. And then my thought about that was, so the bodyguard's job is to protect her. But you're telling me he didn't allow the driver or her to wear a seatbelt? Like, it just seems like if your job is to keep this person safe, you're going to, A, have them wear a seatbelt, and B, make sure the person driving the car is securely in the seat with the seatbelt.
Or at least even not drunk.
Well, that's the other thing is Trevor Reese-Jones. I mean, I did say, I do have that somewhere. Yeah, but like Trevor Reese-Jones did say he did not smell alcohol on Henri Paul.
Right.
And that he never would have allowed someone who was drunk to drive.
Because now that's his job too, though.
Right.
So if you think about it, it's like my own job security is to make sure that you are okay and that nobody's coming after you. But I need to make sure you're alive. So I'm not going to let this dude who's been drinking all night that I'm sitting next to smelling like alcohol, I can't let him drive me. Now, if you even just think about it in a selfish way, he's putting himself in danger also.
Right. That doesn't make any sense to me. Unless, like, he was drunk too, maybe. But there's nothing anywhere that says, like, oh, he was drunk.
Right.
No. It's supposedly just Henri Paul that I saw that was intoxicated.
Yeah, I've only ever heard of Henri Paul being.
I don't know if they ever really look into anyone else, but it wouldn't really matter anyway.
Right.
Anyway, a little bit of suspicion on the day of the crash. There was a Sunday Mirror publication. They published a statement from an unnamed family friend of the royal family who said, quote, Prince Philip has let rip several times recently about the Al-Fayeds. He's been banging on about his contempt for Dodi and how he is an undesirable stepfather to William and Harry. Diana has been told in no uncertain terms about the consequences should she continue the relationship with the Al-Fayed boy. Options include possible exile, although that would be difficult. Because, I mean, honestly, everyone loved Diana.
Right.
So if you're going to exile her, you're going to basically just turn the entire country against you.
Yeah.
Like, but the final sentence of that article supposedly read, but now the royal family may decide to settle up. So, I don't know necessarily how different, like, news was printed in 1981 versus now. So I don't know if, like, maybe they wrote that before they found out about the accident, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
It had already gone to press by the time they found out about the accident.
I see.
But I just think it's weird that the same day that she crashed, like, they have that statement from the family friend of, the royal family may decide to settle up. And that Diana's already been warned not to see him.
Right.
As if they control her, which, I mean,
like I said, they were already trying to tell her to not be in the public light and to stop being so nice.
All she wanted to do was good. Like,
right.
Honestly, like, you're just telling her you're trying to stifle someone for doing good. The Queen's evil. She used to lock her own cousin in mental institutions for life just because they were mentally ill. So look into her. Like,
as Diana's out here, like, hey, I suffer from mental health issues, and this is what's going on,
and you can't shut me up. Like,
no.
It's ridiculous. So I did see somewhere that London was supposed to be notified if Diana was basically moving, if she changed locations, but that no one notified them of the drive to Dodi's apartment. Because, again, remember, she was in Paris, so she wasn't in London, where the royal family is. There was a witness that was on top of the bridge, which was above the tunnel of the accident. He said he heard a loud noise, which he thought sounded like someone trying to drive in neutral. So, not necessarily, like, any clear thing, but it's weird that he describes it as someone trying to drive in neutral. Because that sounds like engine trouble.
Right.
Like, your car is doing something wrong. There was another witness, Eric Patel, the guy that got arrested, what I mentioned a minute ago. He says that he was behind the Mercedes when it entered the tunnel, and that he saw that it was going fast, heard an implosion, which he thought might have been an issue with the exhaust, and then he heard the car crash. So I think it's a weird, again, like, two different people are saying that there's some kind of, like, issue that sounds like something's wrong with the car. Like, car driving in neutral and exhaust can, in my mind, sound similar. I don't know a lot about cars, but to me, they sound similar.
Right.
So, I think it's weird that you have similar descriptions when supposedly the car just, like, I don't know. But when the car was driving, it wasn't even supposed to go to the tunnel. Like, there was a quicker path, like, actually a couple, I believe, to get to Dodi's apartment. But they ended up having to take a left turn, which led them into the tunnel. I don't know if they had to. I saw something that said there may have been a motorcycle sitting there that blocked their right-hand turn. But I'm not sure if that was actually,
like, confirmed.
Right.
Right.
But they did turn, it is confirmed that they turned left and went into the Ponte de la Alma tunnel. Yeah, they did go down there, and I did think it was weird that they had no backup vehicle, like, no protection. Like, usually when you have hiding people traveling, you have at least one vehicle behind them, like a security vehicle. You know what I mean? It's not just you by yourself. But when they were at the hotel, they did have another Mercedes. It was parked out front. They lied to the paparazzi out front and said that Diana and Dodi would be leaving in that Mercedes in a few minutes, and then snuck them out the back to give them a head start. But they literally put them in a different Mercedes.
Right.
So, like, you had another vehicle you could have used for security. You have a bodyguard. You have Henri Paul. Like,
right.
Well,
but I also don't know if at this point, if she's been let go, like, has been, I mean, not let go by the British Royal, but not part of, like, getting the accommodations. But I think what I was going to say is that I think Henri Paul is Diana's actually personal assistant bodyguard. Or, right? Because he's the bodyguard, right?
Trevor.
I think he's like, I think he's the one that she looked out and was like, I will pay you. You know what I mean? Like, personally said, I pay you. But she didn't want their bodyguard.
He is. They didn't. No, she didn't use the royal family's bodyguards. But here's my thing: is you think the royal family's after you, and Dodie and his father also, like, I believe, were very suspicious of the royal family. She had disclosed to other people. We'll get to that in a second. But like, she had disclosed some things to other people.
Right.
So if you're suspicious, why do you not have the security in place? You like. Just a statement that she made, like knowing what was going to happen, basically. If you suspect that, because I'd seen like she had Trevor Jones like looking on your cars for explosives and things like that. So if you're that paranoid, I just feel like you would have more security than we're going the wrong way across town. Like, I don't know. She was super smart. It doesn't seem right to me that you wouldn't have more security and you would just trust this one driver. I don't know. Especially with Dodie's family, like, they own the Ritz. They are wealthy people. They weren't poor. Like, they each came from their own good financial background. But anyway, if that wasn't suspicious for you, after the accident, the tunnel actually was not isolated to preserve evidence, and it was actually cleaned with an industrial solvent detergent and reopened within 4 hours. So they never even basically, like, examined the scene.
Right.
It's like, oh, it hit a pillar.
Yeah.
Whatever you guys say happens is what we go with. Dodie had a cell phone on him that was never recovered, supposedly, and somewhere they did claim that there were illegal drugs, I want to say cocaine, in the car, but of course those are missing. Or that's missing. I forgot who did the test or how they figured it out, but they did say that the final speed was only 65 miles per hour of the car. So it really wasn't going that fast.
And 120, like they were trying to make it sound like.
Right, 100%.
Sorry.
No, you're good. And then I did think it was a little weird that the Mercedes had been stolen and all the electronics had been stripped from it 3 months earlier. But they did have the car repaired. Like, everything was repaired, but it just seemed a little weird to me. Like, you're going to repair everything and then, like, why don't you just get a new one? You have one in front of the hotel, you use a different one in the back. I mean, you're wealthy.
Right.
I don't see why, if it's stolen and stripped, that you wouldn't just buy a new one. Like, no offense, I'm all for repairing things. I just feel like your electronics were stripped, and that's something that
can be huge.
I'm not saying it was hacked because I didn't see anything about that other than that frozen speedometer, but I mean, things could happen. Like, if someone stripped the electronics in my car, I don't know if I'd be riding around. So, this one the police didn't really follow up on, so I'm pretty sure the official story is still that it was Henri Paul being drunk that caused it. Yeah. But they eventually did find evidence that there was a white Fiat, supposedly, that had basically cut off the Mercedes in their lane and like left like scratch marks or whatever and like crashed it. It was like taillights or something. But that's what supposedly caused the Mercedes to crash and lose control. They said the PD couldn't actually locate this car, but the private investigators hired by Dodi Al-Fayed's father found it in a garage. It had been sold to a garage and had a newly replaced taillight. They did figure out that the car belonged to a paparazzi man named James Andanson, who was known for basically getting last minute, like the last shots of famous people before they died. He was paparazzi for high-level politicians and supposedly boasted to some of his friends that he was in the tunnel when Diana crashed and was the last one to photograph her alive. So the police department actually ends up arresting the investigators for interfering in the police investigation and then end up believing in Danson's alibi that he had taken a plane out of Paris at 3 a.m. based off one gas receipt that he showed them. Not quite sure how a gas receipt connects to being on a plane, but that's good enough for the police.
Oh my god.
I have a couple little notes here. There was a former MI6 agent, which is like Secret Service for, I think, London, England, Britain, wherever the royal family is. His name was Richard Tomlinson. He said that he was actually aware of a plot made by MI6 to assassinate a Serbian leader named Milosevic using a powerful laser strobe to disorient the driver of a car in a tunnel, forcing a crash.
That is so funny that you just said that, because I've been waiting this whole time to be like, I wonder. Now, I don't know. I'll let you go a little bit further.
So, some people actually believe that the white Fiat, driven by James Andanson, crossed over into the Mercedes lane. And when basically the Mercedes kind of hit that and was trying to regain control, a motorcycle pulled up along the right side of the car. And they had a flash that they used to the car, like, basically did the same thing, blinded the driver and caused the final crash into the 13th pillar.
So crazy. I've also heard that there was a flash, and they were also looking at it as like it could have been a pipe bomb or a flash grenade type of situation that got whoever was driving the white Fiat could have thrown once they cut it off, and that's why they saw a bright light to have disoriented the driver, and that's why he went right into the pillar, because it is just very weird how the direction of how it literally kind of like just instantly goes boom and then straight over to it. It's not like a veer off or like a drunk. You would imagine if they were drunk and they fell asleep or something like that. You can veer. Right. Where this was more of a sharp, actual turn straight head on.
I get what you're saying. It's more smooth almost when you're just drunk and passing out, whereas this was more panicked. Like, I have to make a sudden turn kind of thing. Like, I'm going to avoid what's in front of me.
Yep.
But it is rumored that James Andanson and Henri Paul, the driver, had Secret Service MI5, MI6 connections. I don't know if those operated at the same time. I forgot to look into that, but they were just Secret Service branches. I don't know if they were the same time or if, like, MI6 was what came after MI5. I don't really know. I just know they're both Secret Service, like our CIA and FBI kind of thing. Probably closer to CIA. But here's a funny fact. In June of 2000, Andanson, this guy that owned the white Fiat, parks on Army land, locks himself in his car, and sets himself on fire. But doesn't leave a suicide note. And supposedly there's a French law that requires all suspicious deaths to have an inquiry done, which I'm guessing is just like our word for investigation. It's just basically looking into the situation. But supposedly none was done for that case, which you would think on Army land you would automatically want to figure out why are you committing suicide. But I mean, come on, you locked yourself in a car and lit yourself on fire to commit suicide and didn't even leave a note. But again, remember, he was supposedly connected to MI6, so we all know that strange things have to happen to hide secrets. A week later, speaking of hiding secrets, 3 masked men broke into Andanson's office. It was a photo agency. They shot the security guard. They spent 3 hours ransacking the office, even though the workers were calling 911 for help. Like, multiple calls were made to 911. Police never responded to the scene.
What?
Literally, that's what I found. Police never responded, and it literally made some of the employees believe that it was French Secret Service that actually broke in, looking for the photos that Andanson claimed he took of Diana in the tunnel, because they would show the presence of a Secret Service member.
Wow.
Now, I mean, again, this is a conspiracy side, so I'm not saying necessarily it's fact, but I'm not going to say it's false either.
Right.
So, I mean, if you want my opinion, I think it's probably clear. But
yeah.
I love Diana. But within 36 hours, not only was his office broken into, but there was a photo agency in London and the home of a photographer agent were also broken into. So probably anyone that's like, yeah, I know what happened in her final moments. Like, your shit, your proof is gone.
Done.
So MI6, a little fun fact about them, they are supposedly asked by the royals to provide intelligence on potential threats, which you would expect from Secret Service. But but it could include asking friendly intelligence services such as the CIA and FBI to place the royals under surveillance also for their protection. I have it listed somewhere else too, but the NSA does have like over 1,000 documents related to the royal family and like surveillance on them, I believe. And the CIA and FBI do also have their own records on them also. So like they have done surveillance.
No.
I'm assuming at the request of MI6 or whatever secret agency is intact at the time. There was a man named Richard Spearman. He was the chief of staff to MI6 director Nick. I didn't write his last name. I just put S. I'm sorry. But Richard Spearman was supposedly at the British Embassy immediately. I don't know if it was him or the MI6 director. One of them or both were at the British Embassy immediately before and after the Princess Diana's car accident. So like they were in the same area. They were at the British Embassy. Apparently, from the sounds of it, left during the time of the accident, but came back right after. And you're fucking related to MI6 again. Like, there comes that Secret Service. So, obviously, people are like, okay, but shit happens, like, whatever. Drunk drivers are a legit thing. Not discrediting that. That's 100% a possibility in a lot of scenarios, but in this case, it's not. And I'm going to tell you why. We're going to talk about Henri Paul next. So, before I get too much into the drunk driving, I do want to say that his best friend Claude did confirm that Henri Paul had Secret Service connections. He was second in charge of security for the Ritz and was supposedly gather information from, like, because it's a fancy place. There's, like, high-name people from a lot of different countries that come there. He was supposedly gather information from worldwide sources for MI6 and would get paid for the info he provided. And this was according to Richard Tomlinson, that former MI6 officer or agent. And he said that he actually saw Henri Paul's file when he was working there one day. It was, he said in 1992, and like it went back a couple years before that. So Henri Paul had been working for MI6 prior to the accident. I don't know how long prior, but for a minute at least. He did have multiple bank accounts when they looked after the incident that totaled over $300,000, which does seem a little bit steep if you're just a driver. Right? I think. I don't really know, but like...
But, I mean, it also doesn't say how long he saved it for. Like, I mean, maybe if you... Like,
but
they
in
said
multiple bank accounts, too? Like, why are you not keeping it in one?
That's true.
So, that was weird. He did take a physical 3 days prior to the accident to renew his pilot license, and the physical showed no signs of alcohol or drug use. So, let's get into a brief little thing of his autopsy. When they did the autopsy, supposedly he had a 1.74 gram reading for the alcohol. I'm not 100% sure what that means, but basically his alcohol reading came back 3 times the legal French limit and twice Britain's limit. I don't know what that is compared to us, but obviously, like, he was legally intoxicated, supposedly based off his blood tests, and it showed that he had medication in his system as well. The weird thing about it was it also showed that he had 20.7% carbon monoxide rating, but that should have been causing illness. It should have been giving him headaches, vomiting, not really giving him the ability to drive comfortably and, like, kind of giving him some abnormal behavior because, I mean, you're basically poisoning yourself slowly at that point.
Yeah.
Like, Alistair Hayes, a carbon monoxide specialist, said 2 hours before, if Paul's levels were that high, the 2 hours before, they would have been around 30%. And he actually watched some security videos of Henri Paul, which you can also see, where, like, he's walking around the Ritz. It's about a half an hour, I think, before they're leaving. He bends down and ties, like, literally just crouches down almost in a baseball, like, catcher's position and ties both of his shoes, which is not something you normally... And he had total balance. Like, his balance was better than mine. But they were like, he's drunk, which you can't... Normally, drunk people can't...
I know, I wouldn't be able to tie my shoe.
Tie their shoes from a baseball catcher's position. Like, I can't even do that sober.
Right.
So yeah, he watched the videos and, like, he saw no indication that Henri Paul was infected with carbon monoxide. The police department claims that carbon monoxide supposedly infected him. It came from the Mercedes airbag when it deployed, but Mercedes discredited them once again, saying there's no carbon monoxide in their airbag systems. Again, not 100%
They're just
sure
trying
what's
to blame
true,
Mercedes, and Mercedes like, nah, bitch.
Right.
You ain't.
It's basically like when a plane crashes and the plane company tries to blame the pilot, but the pilot's family is like, no, he had a perfect record. Like,
Right.
Everybody points a finger somewhere.
Yeah.
Hair samples taken from Henri Paul showed traces of drugs, but it wasn't properly measured. So when you take a sample, I think it's supposed to be like an inch to properly get a reading. I remember because my dad had to do a drug test and they had to take it from his arm because he didn't have it wasn't long enough on his head. But it wasn't properly measured. It was too short, and the drug amounts were super small. And what they found too was like almost too small to measure. But what they did see was supposedly just like typical antidepressant stuff that half the area was on. Which Oregon Pharmacy, there's a lot of people on antidepressants, so I'm not surprised. And honestly, that doesn't necessarily mean you can't drive either. Should you mix them with alcohol? No, but I don't believe he was drunk. And again, on the autopsy, there's no damage to the liver to indicate he had drinking issues. So a second examination, no indication that he was a drinker that would have driven drunk. So there were requests from the Al-Fayed family to have independent blood tests done, but those were refused, despite the fact that the blood carbon monoxide level ratings were actually more consistent with it being like a suicide by car exhaust versus dying in a Mercedes where the airbag deployed. His blood samples weren't actually refrigerated, and apparently as blood starts to decompose, it does actually give you a higher rating for, like, it shows extra alcohol in the blood.
Right.
So, I mean, maybe that's why it showed, like, you think he was drunk, because his blood was decomposing. The autopsy results eventually were tested by top pathologists who noted 28 critical errors, making the procedure unreliable, including the autopsy wasn't timed, there was no precise description of how they even ID'd the body, there was no explanation for the 20.7 carbon monoxide measurement, because again, the one explanation given was provided by the police and was discredited by Mercedes, and they called the results inexplicable and said, quote, the hypothesis that there was a mix-up in samples needs to be seriously considered. So they're basically like, I don't even know if this is Henri Paul because this makes no fucking sense. There were other deaths that night, so they think the blood samples may have been accidentally switched.
Right.
And funniest part about the drunk driving statement is it was released before the body was fully analyzed, so there really wouldn't have been a report indicating that he was drunk. But yet, that was the official statement at that time. I don't really know how that works either. So now, we got some more stuff here, like how Diana knew what was coming. Maybe not the exact extent, but like she knew she was going to die in her car. In a letter to her butler and talking to her lawyer in person, I believe, Diana actually told both of them at different points that this was a quote from the letter. He's planning an accident in my car, brake failure or head injury to make a path. It was a classified document they had a picture of, so they blurred, like someone had blurred out the name of whoever she was pointing the finger at. But I think it's pretty safe to say it's someone in the royal family, perhaps Prince Philip or Prince Charles. I'm going to go with one of them, and I'm going to say the Queen's always in on it. Like, nothing happens without Queen's approval.
Right.
But in July of 1997, Diana actually took her sons William and Harry to stay as guests of the Al-Fayeds on their yacht. She went back alone 3 weeks later without them, where she was basically publicly with Dodi on this yacht. So, it's kind of like a, hey, yeah, we're together and I don't really care about trying to hide it anymore. A month before her death, she did say people were going to be surprised by the next thing I do, but I didn't find any information on what exactly that was going to be, because I'm guessing it was going to be a surprise.
Right.
Like, what she said. At the end of August, Dodi did take Diana to Paris, and security cameras show him and a bodyguard entering the jewelry store across the street from the Ritz because he was buying an engagement ring for her. The whole fucking reason they were there was to get an engagement ring, and his father said that also. So, like, you might say that, like, oh, that's probably not true, but, like I know fathers can lie for sons and shit, It's supposedly on a security camera, like, because the Ritz has cameras, they're gonna aim them every fucking where. And B, you have his father saying it too, like, that's a personal witness that should know what his son's up to in regards to, like, this, you know what I mean? They were all on a yacht together in July.
Right.
Like, you're not gonna tell me the father doesn't know? He knew. There were two paparazzi, supposedly paparazzi, also waiting outside the Ritz for a photo op, the hotel they were at before they left. But those two then were never actually identified. Like, so the rest of the paparazzi were all able to be identified, but there were two of them that nobody knows who they were. Like we mentioned earlier, if anyone didn't do the math, it took about an hour and 10 to 20 minutes for a hospital, or for the ambulance, to get from the crime scene 3 miles to the hospital. So, like...
Not country miles, city miles. Right?
Right. Yeah,
still city miles,
you're in the tunnel. Yeah. So, I mean, like, I'm sorry, but there's no way it should have taken... Even if you had to stop twice, come the fuck on.
I walked 6 miles, and it took me 2 hours. Walking.
Right? Like, it's... Literally could have picked her up and carried her fast.
Right.
Like, you could have just put one person on each end of the stretcher and run her ass down. So, yeah, that I just... Are you kidding me? Like, why? You're really... No. Something's not right there. And if that is how France actually runs things, then I really hope they reconsidered since 1997.
True.
But the original French traffic report from the police wasn't actually included in the official report from what I heard. So, because they were saying that a lot of them were like pissed off. Like, we did our job. We did what we were supposed to. We took witness statements. We did X, Y, Z. And yet it's not in the official report of what happened.
Oh.
Another mysterious thing is Diana had a bodyguard named Benny Maneke at one point. It was about 10 years before her accident. She had been confiding in him, and he died in a motorcycle accident. There was one anonymous informant. This kind of goes along with what Mikey was saying, actually, with the flash bombs. This informant claims that supposedly, in the time Henri Paul was separated from Diana and Dodie that night, there was supposedly a vial on him that had been remotely triggered when the car drove into the tunnel, and it released nerve gas into the car, which would have caused him to lose control and crash into the tunnel pillar. Like, supposedly, according to the anonymous informant, this was a plan that was set, and it was perfectly executed. I did wonder if that had something to do, because the witness, Eric Patel, said he heard a first implosion. So I'm wondering if maybe when it was triggered, like, if it's triggered, could you have heard that?
Right.
From the motorcycle in back of you? Like, would it have made an explosion kind of sound within the car?
True.
I don't really know how that works, but, like, that's I can see that happening. Or even combining it with you, if someone on a motorcycle did throw up or pull up and maybe somehow threw it through the window.
Right.
I don't really know. But I have to imagine they would have a way to test that, but at the same time, the autopsy...
right, look at what they've done. They haven't really done much in 4 hours after the
I should have looked
accident. The bridge was up.
So yeah, I mean, that's definitely a possibility I could see happening, though, is like nerve gas fucking you up. And Diana did say something was going to happen in her car, cause head damage.
Right.
And just a reminder about how Queen Elizabeth would lock her own family members, like cousins, in mental institutions, basically, because they were mentally ill, lock them away in an asylum for life, while Diana would go visit homes for the criminally insane. So basically, if you think about that, that's like, let's say Queen Elizabeth did that to like everybody like that was mentally insane. Diana would basically be visiting the people that Queen Elizabeth was sending there.
Mm-hmm.
That is like the biggest fuck you. Like, we are complete opposite beliefs spectrum.
Because she was good with people.
That's insane. Like, that's how good of a heart she had. we're gonna do another episode on her and her legacy and her heart later on because if for any reason you don't know Princess Diana, please don't wait for our next podcast to look into her.
Right?
Look into her life.
There's so much.
There's a lot of documentaries all over like Netflix, Amazon,
YouTube, like
probably
literally.
Hulu. Like they're everywhere.
Right.
So check her out. We are gonna close you out this week with our song of the week. In honor of Princess Diana, I had read that her favorite song was supposedly Hello by Lionel Richie. Now, I'm going to be honest, I think that was coming from Lionel Richie himself. I think that, like, supposedly she had told him that was her favorite song when they met once. So I don't know if it's really necessarily true or if Lionel Richie was just trying to toot his own horn. But that is what we're going to go with, because
that's what you guys are going to get for this week.
I think Princess Diana did like that kind of
and I mean, that is a good song. I like that song.
It was the one I'm thinking of. I do too, but I kept forgetting to listen to it to double check. But yeah, I'll drop that link in the description to the song of the week for you guys, along with our normal Instagram, Facebook, Twitters, all that.
Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe. Thank you guys so much, and that was another episode of Tainted Warriors. Bye, guys. Tainted Warriors, a TW Productions podcast.